You are now listening to Bull Hook Golf, an unfiltered golf podcast taking you inside the ropes with unfiltered stories, insights, analysis, and exclusive interviews. Welcome back, everybody, to Pull Hook Golf, the podcast. My name is Matt Cook, and today I've got a very special guest who is part of the team series of Pull Hook Golf, which is Mr. Brandon Epstein. Now, Brandon, he is my mental performance coach, I like to refer to him as, because he helps me achieve greatness, which he's helping a lot of people achieve greatness. So Brandon Epstein, he is a mental performance coach that helps high achievers turn inner resistance into inner power for career best performances. Now, Brandon's got over 15 years working in the space, and his clients range from millionaire entrepreneurs all the way to creative artists, to athletes ranging from pro boxing, pro MMA, NHL, NFL, MLB, just to name a few. And you've even heard that you might have gotten a new professional golfer on there as well, which we will talk about as we go through. But he's also an entrepreneur who's built businesses that have empowered millions of people around the world to be their best selves through his educational content. Brandon is a devoted husband and father. Finally, he's a seeker of truth, humbly on the path of personal awakening. Welcome to Pull Hook Golf, Mr. Brandon Epstein.
Hallelujah. Good to be here with you, bro. Thank you so much
that.
for the interview.
Hey, man, my pleasure. Now, before we do kind of get going here, I also want to mention that Brandon does have a new book that has just been released. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It's a lot of the work that we've done one-on-one, but it is called Program to Fail: How to Break Through Your Mental Blocks and Achieve Greatness. Let me tell you, it has been a life changer for me, so I know how good it is. And based off of the performance that he gets from his professional athletes, I mean, get yourself a copy. We'll dive in. I mean, you can buy it on Amazon. So just look up that title. You can go on, buy that. Make sure to get the hardcover. The hardcover's classy. But also, with that said, I do have to quickly mention our show sponsor for today, which I told Brandon, I was like, this is my Aaron Rodgers. So I have the polo that goes along with it. When you wear them together, it's a little bit too much, but this is my ayahuasca Aaron Rodgers / Bou Toad Experience hat that has, you got mushrooms with eyeballs on here. You got all these different crazy symbols. So I love it. Swannies.co. And everybody, if you are a new listener coming in because you know Brandon and you're listening to his podcast episode, well, guess what, folks? I've got a special one for you because Swannies.co. Promo code PullHookGolf25. You get 25% off your entire order. They've got 6 shirts like this, which I don't know if you can see it or not, but you can kind of see that there is a goat and it has the tiger marks on there. So this is the Swannies goat shirt. I had to wear it for you since we're talking about achieving greatness. And certainly go on to Swannies.co. Get yourself that 25% off. Their hoodies are bomb. Polos are bomb. The hats are sick. I would say that these are by far my favorite hats that I've ever run into. They've got the rope hat styles. They got a lot of stuff. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit here, Brandon, about our background and how we got to working together. So Brandon and we started working together, 6 months ago or so, I would say, roughly in that range, maybe a little bit longer. But the reason that I actually found Brandon, and I mentioned it on the show that I smoked toad venom out of a crack pipe and had this spiritual awakening and experience and everything. And I didn't get too much into it on the show. Me and Bobby were having some good laughs, and certainly, there was a episode of Ted Lasso that the bus driver was talking about smoking toad venom and everything. Well, that's the Bou Toad Experience, folks. And that's actually how I came across Brandon, because after I did it, I was looking for some additional guidance, really wanting to get to that next level. And when I came across some of your YouTube videos, Brandon, you've also been through that Bou Toad experience. Tell everybody, because you explain it a little bit better than I do. I joke around about it a little bit on the show, but tell us a little bit about your Bou Toad experience and that video that you created around it.
Yeah, brother. We're Bou Toad bros, so we're in a brotherhood for life.
That we are.
And
We're part of the one.
yeah, bro, we're part of the oneness. Yeah, so I got the oneness symbol, or is it right here behind me? Man, the Bufo toad, it's not something you really decide to do. I feel like it seeks you out, interestingly enough. For for the seekers out there looking for deeper levels of truth, the Bufo seems to find them. So that was, kind of my experience with it. I've always been a seeker. I had done experiences with, mushrooms and LSD and ayahuasca previously, but I was still seeking for the truth of all truths. And that led me to the Bufo toad. And really, what the Bufo does is it allows you to experience a full ego death. And I'd say that people who have near death experiences get to have that. But besides that, you don't get an ego death until you actually die. And so it's the experience of dying before you die. So you can have the perspective that your human experience is one of the ego. And if you lose the ego, then you're just in the oneness. You just connect back with God, the oneness, the higher power, the everything. And yeah, having experience with Bufo just gives you that perspective to understand and really feel at a visceral level like, okay, I'm having a human experience, but simultaneously I'm having a God experience. And I am God, and God is me, and it's all one. And I'm an expression of this divine intelligence. And Bufo just allows you to really viscerally experience that. And so for me, for example, I didn't grow up in a religious household. Like my dad is Jewish, my last name's Epstein, but he wasn't really practicing, and my mom was an atheist. And so I grew up not really believing in God. And then I did Bufo. I was like, yep, God's in the building. It's undeniable now. So, I mean, there's so many rabbit holes we can go down with Bufo, but
Oh, for sure. I
I
mean,
mean,
quick experience. It only lasts about 15 minutes, but
yeah,
yeah, that's where we could get down quite a few rabbit holes talking about time and space and how it doesn't exist when you do Bufo and so forth, and certainly the oneness. But I do want to mention that you and I work together. And you enlightened me, showed me some guidance around the fact that we are really kind of born with this entire mentality of failure and failures from the past. And I'm going to say it over and over again throughout this, but the title of your book, Program to Fail. And folks, I mean, there is not a better title for that book than Program to Fail, because you showed me in a lot of ways around how to get beyond that, how to get beyond our own self-doubts and really build up self-belief, confidence is a lot of it. But talk to the audience about some of the work that you and I did.
yeah, absolutely. And so you found that video that I did about integrating a Bufo experience because when you have that Bufo ego death experience, you can actually start to see some of your programming. And previously, it's just kind of like, if you're a fish and you live your whole life in water, like you're not even aware you're in water. So the Bufo experience allows you to like be like, oh shit, I'm in water. Right? You get to start to see all your programming for what it is. And so in that video, I was just talking about how when this bubbling up of your programming that was previously unconscious comes up, you can actually decide what program is working for you, what program is working against you, and then you can choose to remove the programming that's been holding you back, and then choose new programming that's going to propel you forward. And so that's really what we did was we went through that integration of experience of having you identify every one of these beliefs, which I really can simultaneously talk about like beliefs just or interchangeable rather beliefs and programming. So you can think about like your beliefs as the pieces of code that run this supercomputer that is your subconscious mind. And so what we did was we went in and we identified what you wanted to achieve in your life. And then we felt into the resistance, which lives in the physical body, the energetic resistance in the form of emotion, like negative emotion, like resistance is just emotions that don't feel good in your body. And through those emotions, we were able to identify, okay, what pieces of programming are basically making you feel the way you feel right now. And by doing so, we could identify, okay, this belief is creating this invisible roadblock for you. And we need to remove this and replace it if you're going to start to flow towards the goals you set for yourself. And ultimately, it's what it does is it gets you into an emotional flow state. So you just move towards what you want without resistance, because we all know that the information is out there, right? I mean,
Lots of info.
lots of information. When you look at the US, like I love the example of like 70% of people are overweight, right? I know like some people are like, I love my body, I want to be overweight, but I bet most of those people don't want to be overweight. And if they type into Google how to lose weight, million answers are all right there, and there's a million ways to get to the result that you want. So why don't they do it? Well, they're holding beliefs, which is just a software that runs your supercomputer, that are in conflict with this goal of losing weight, right? And so a mom who's super busy all the time and just like says, I don't have time to work out, and as long as she believes she doesn't have time to work out, she will never work out. Until that belief changes, she's going to never work out, right? Or if she believes that she's going to sacrifice time with her kids, if she's going to dedicate time to working out, then she's probably not going to dedicate time to working out because she doesn't want to give up her kids. So we wire ourselves in this way to create these mental roadblocks that are not, they don't actually have to be true. We're only making them true. And by making them true, we're kind of backing ourselves into a corner and creating this life where we just get stuck. And so what I always do, and what we did together, Matt, is we identify, what do you want to achieve in your life? Okay, what is the emotional resistance that's there? What is the programming in the form of beliefs that's holding you back from actually flowing towards these goals that you want? And then we just change those beliefs for you. And by doing so, you're able to flow with a lot more ease towards the thing that you want in your life.
I couldn't agree more, because obviously I went through it with you and I felt like you just explained it perfectly. Now, folks, I get it. This is a golf podcast, and when it comes to sports and athletes, you're probably wondering, well, how does this work for athletes, and where does sports come into play here? And what I can tell you is that it's entirely built within what athletes do all the time, and those self-doubts and everything. And we're going to touch upon that a little bit further. But Brandon, what about your background in sports? I mean, in the book, you talk a lot about your background in sports and in football specifically. So take us through a little bit of your background around football.
Yeah, so my journey to get where I am today was completely organic. There was nothing like preconceived about getting here. I mean, I kind of made up my own job in many ways, and that's how I arrived where I am today. And it all started with just a desire to get on the football field in college, because my freshman year, I rode the bench and I was like, this sucks. I have to go to practice. I got to watch film. I got to do all the stuff the starters have to do, but they actually get to play in the games. So in my off season, I just relentlessly was looking for solutions to like get myself better. And I already exhausted workouts, nutrition, and technique and stuff like that. And so that led me down this path of finding an alternative way to improve performance. And I connected with a teacher, my Sensei Clay,
Oh,
who started
love Sensei Clay. I mean, in the
Sensei
book,
Clay.
folks, you got to read the book, because Sensei Clay, I mean, some of the teachings and stuff that you receive from Sensei Clay, I'm not going to get into detail here, but man, just awesome. Just folks, just know that you need to go read this book, and you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no doubt, man. He's a legend. And he's really a modern day mystic. He's the only one that I've actually met that can do magic. He does things that aren't supposed to be able to be done. And yeah, he taught me these techniques. He started with basic stuff around like meditation and visualization, all the tools that you probably use in golf. Talk about positive self-talk and goal setting, being able to get a routine down. But he just took me beyond that, just conscious routines, and down into the subconscious, into deeper levels of just these deeper techniques that allowed me to program myself for success in ways I'd never been introduced to before. And so he showed me how to work with my energy and how to ground myself and how to do visualization techniques that got me into a much deeper, almost hypnotic state of meditation. And by doing so, I was able to start to get stronger, actually become more powerful, more explosive. And so, long story short, came back the next year, dominated, was able to start for my team, had a couple standout games, and really achieved everything I wanted to in the sport at the time. And during that experience, everyone on my team started like asking me for help. They wanted access to my techniques. They wanted my healing techniques. And so I found that actually I was way better at making other people better with all these mental techniques that I was using than playing my sport. And so that just put me down a path of like, okay, I was okay at football, but I can be like legendary. I can be like one of the best in the world at this. And so that just sent me down this path of pursuing that. Create a self-design major while I was in school, the mental aspect of human performance. Went on and did a research study and got a grant to study how these visualization techniques could improve bench press performance because, I was a fucking beast. I was a meathead. And
I've
that's what I
seen
still
the
cared about.
photos of you, man. Jeez. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about just being ripped. And that's what also was interesting about your book is that that was almost in your mind an unattainable task to work out enough to where you got a six pack and so forth. But I do want to take one step back real quick before we move further on, because one of the things that I think people have a tough time with is how they're going to be judged about doing mental work and so forth. And I mean, in the book, you talked about how your coaches in college would see that you were doing this visualization stuff and they would start to criticize you and start to put you down because they didn't understand it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I was definitely, dancing the beat of my own drummer. And football is like a very like tribal sport, as a lot of these close knit communities are. And so nobody was doing what I was doing. And so I feel like my coaches might have felt threatened by it. And so they just talk shit and they, yeah, I don't know, they were scared of it for whatever reason, just because I was outside of the box. And I didn't really care. I was into my stuff and I was like, this is making me better. So I did it. But I think whenever you do anything that's outside the box, you're going to receive a little bit of pushback. Like you talked about Aaron Rodgers from the beginning of this podcast. It's like, he's a dude who did ayahuasca and then won back-to-back MVPs, right? Like not many people doing ayahuasca in the NFL, and he received a lot of shit talking about it. A lot of people hated him for it. But it seems that like he probably got some benefits from it considering his performance coming back from having those experiences. So I've always been someone who doesn't really care about whether what I'm doing is universally accepted. I just want to get results. I have my eye on the prize of what I want to achieve in my life. I'm just willing to do whatever it takes to get there, no matter how weird it is.
I love it. And you brought up Aaron Rodgers, and he was actually on the Pat McAfee show this morning talking about how, he's not doing anything normal, so to speak, with his Achilles injury and rehabbing and everything. And this past weekend, he actually was out in a boot at the Jets game in New York, and everybody was just floored. And doctors across Twitter or X were talking about it and talking about how is he possibly doing this. They were even commenting on his ankle, and I think he put it in the best, or his ankle cast, but he put it in a great way. He goes, listen, miracles are just things that have never been done before. And when you have that belief and that belief system, and I think that's what ayahuasca, as well as, I mean, he went into the deprecation caves and spent 3 days in darkness this past year, and before he got traded to the Jets and everything. And I mean, he does a lot of that stuff of mental work. He is a truth seeker as well, I believe. And that's one of the things that's pretty interesting about how all of this that we're talking about in sports really go hand in hand. And we'll get to that in a little bit around specifically sports and the things that it's doing for athletes that you work with. But I do want to ask you, why did you decide to write this book? Why now?
I felt like it was the summation of my life's work so far. And in a way, for me personally, like selfishly, it was kind of like completing the loop and on all the work that I've done so far and everything I've learned, and kind of like saying, here it is. It's a solidified. This is my teaching. This is what I teach, because what's in the book, the playbook, it's two parts. Part one's a story. Part two is the playbook. Playbook number two, or the part two, which is the playbook, is literally what I take my one-on-one coaching clients through. So it's all there. There's no mystery there. Of course, when I work with people one-on-one, it's a much more personalized experience. But, I just wanted to put it all out there for anyone who wants access. And, but for me personally, yeah, it was just being able to complete this chapter of my life in many ways, because like I said, I'm a seeker of truth, and all the techniques in this book have gotten me to where I am, and they've gotten a lot of results in my personal life. It gotten my clients a lot of work, but I'm not done. And so I'm just excited about giving this to the world as like a way to kind of complete this loop for myself and then give this gift to the world for anyone who can't work with me one-on-one coaching. Here's a book. You get access to this. And then once I'm done really, getting this book out there, I'm going to go back in the cave, right? And back in the lab and continue to go down deeper into myself, continue to work with my sensei, continuing to integrate new techniques to take what I do to the next level. So does that make sense? Kind of like that selfish part to it, and then
Oh,
of my own
absolutely.
completing the loop. And then the other part is like, I wanted to gift this to people because most people can't afford to work with me one-on-one. And I'm also only one guy, so I can't clone myself. So having the book out there, I can just point anyone to it and be like, listen, it's $10, grab the book, you get the keys to the castle.
And by the way, just so that everybody knows, because I had early access to the book, I went through the entire book and looked at the playbook as well. And it is everything that we worked on. And granted, it cost me a lot more money than $10 to, go through that book. But certainly, everybody, this is a gift that Brandon is putting out there. And I do want to get back to one of the things that you did say around kind of understanding the supercomputer of our minds, because I think, a lot of the listeners out there that are obsessed with golf and everything are always looking to get better, but maybe they hear the word supercomputer, they hear software, they're like, hang on a second, are we in a simulation? We're not going there, folks. But one thing that we can certainly tell you is what you mean by supercomputer and so forth that we're tapping into when we start to reprogram it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have this supercomputer at the subconscious level that runs our whole life. And some of it's primordial, it's biological, it's been programmed into us for generations and generations. That's how our heart knows to beat itself, our digestive system knows how to digest your food, your hair knows how to grow itself. The body is programmed to do all these things and do them right, right? And when the body has disease, right, at the physical level, it just means that there's some broken code at the biological level. So the body has its innate code, and then we pick up all this other code early in life because we have this biology that says, all right, human body must work this way to survive. But then we're in this interactive world and we have to survive in this world. And so the program when we start picking up from the second we're born is, how do I survive in my tribe? Because if you are born into a tribe, let's say 10,000 years ago, and you're going against a tribe, you're going to get kicked out of the tribe. If you get kicked out of the tribe, you're dead. Humans need each other to survive. And so we're still operating from that biological place of, I've got to do what everyone in my tribe does or I'm going to die. And so consciously, we never have this thought, but that's really the programming that's running beneath the surface. And so from 0 to 7, we are in hypnosis. That's how we can learn so fast. And, kids can pick up language so quickly and learn skills so quickly, is because they're really in this hypnotic state. Their brain waves are slowed down much more so than we are as adults. And they're looking at mom and dad, they're looking at siblings, they're looking at community, family, friends, looking at TV, looking at everything around them and going, this is normal. This is acceptable. This is what I should believe to be true if I want to thrive and survive in this tribe. So that's why we pick up religion. We pick up what political party to root for. We pick what sports teams to root for. All these things we get programmed into us. And they're only true. They're only as right as we believe they are. And so we get that primary programming as our foundation at a very young age. And so if you can think about it, we're not going to start blaming our parents for anything because, of course, where they get their programming from their parents, from their community, it just gets passed
Thanks,
along.
Mom and Dad.
Right? But we can recognize that maybe not everything that we picked up from them was in our best interest. And so that's kind of the premise behind Program to Fail, is that, of course, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably achieved in many aspects of your life. You're probably very successful, but there are aspects of your life where you have been programmed to fail. And so what we want to do is just identify where those aspects are holding you back and then fix those broken pieces of code, because Not everything you got programmed into is going to be in your best interest. It was programmed for survival much more than it was for you to thrive. And so, as a recap, 0 to 7, you're getting most of that foundational programming. And then after that, your subconscious gets programmed through.
Now, a quick word from our sponsor. Swannies is here with a fresh take. Performance-based materials are a given these days. But if you're looking for the stretchiest and most lightweight pieces that deliver a look that says, I'm here for a good time, take a walk on the Swannies side. With fabric sourced from recycled plastics and designs sourced from our very own weekend warriors, Swannies is looking out for both our planet and those that need a little style to boost their drive another 15 yards. Premium looks from top to bottom at swannies.co.
Through strong emotional experiences and through repetition. And so, let's say you're someone. I was working actually with this dude yesterday, and he was telling me, he believed that work sucked. I was like, okay, well, where does that come from? Well, he's had jobs the last 15 years where his job sucked. And so right now, because he has all this proof, he believes work sucks, which means that even though now he's in this management level job where his job could actually be awesome, he's going to keep believing his job sucks until he reprograms himself to interact with this new situation in a new way. And so through those strong emotional experiences, through the repetition of events, we gain this programming. And, when we think about golf, right? Your swing, it gets programmed into your subconscious. And through those repetitions, that's how your subconscious learns to perform in a certain way. That's how you get these certain routines, there's certain ways of playing. It's all getting programmed into your subconscious, especially as an adult, just through that repetition and strong emotional experience.
Now, can you share with us, and this is hopefully a little bit of a insider gift to the audience, but so just the practical tools, or how do I put this? Can you share with them what you have to do, that first step in kind of the acceptance, and then how to get beyond that self-doubt, so to speak? So let's say that I have a self-doubt as to the fact that I started too late in golf to be a great golfer. What would we do in that scenario in order to break that thought process?
Yeah. So I would like to ramp you up to get to that space where we do that deep work. But if we were going to drop right into that, right into the reprogramming, it sounds like you would have the belief that you started too late to be successful or to achieve something, right? It's probably to some end. I started too late to become a professional. I started too late to win this, tournament, whatever it may be. And so we go through the process of just accepting it, because if you believe that to be true, let's not fight it, because maybe in many ways you've been fighting it, but it's been in there the whole time. So just accept it fully. I like to just breathe through it, just accepting it all the way, all the emotions that come along with that, accepting it, and then surrendering into the past, letting it go, and just acknowledging that, like that, yeah, you've been operating from this place of you started too late for a long time, but you can actually surrender that. And that's kind of some of the magic that I do in the one-on-one sessions with people, is helping them surrender stuff into the past. But surrender is a skill in itself. We surrender that belief into the past, and then we alchemize it, which means we just choose the opposite belief, because energy can't be created nor destroyed. So we have to reclaim that same energy. So the opposite of I started too late to win this tournament is I believe I started at the perfect time to win this tournament, right? And by choosing that new belief, you'll make it true. And by holding that old belief, you'll make that true as well. And you're not even consciously aware of how you're doing it. It's not like a choice. It's not like, oh, well, I'm believing that I started too late, so now I'm not going to try as hard. That's not how it works, because how you feel and how you show up in the world and the actions you take are not just a force of will and action. It's not like you're choosing to do it. You think you are, but you're not. Through your belief of I started too late, there's this hidden force beneath the surface that's going to hold you back, because it's going to go, why would I even put so much effort for when it's not even going to matter? I'm never going to win that tournament because I started too late. And so you're never going to make the choice to consciously not try as hard as you can, but subconsciously you're being held back and you don't even know it. And when we transmute that belief to become, I believe I started at the perfect time to win this tournament, all of a sudden you bring yourself into energetic alignment. The resistance disappears, And now it's just so much more easy for you to get into the flow of doing everything necessary to win that tournament.
I love it. It's one of the things that we haven't worked on quite yet, Brandon, is around my actual golf game. We did a lot of
Sure.
work around, self-doubt, self-belief around, business and so forth. So yeah, that was I wanted to ask you that one for the audience sake, because it's one of those that I'm going to be working on in the near future, as I certainly want to overcome some of those things. And that's a real self-doubt that I've always had with me is, oh, wow, I started at the age of 13. There's so many people out there that started so much younger. How could I possibly be as good as them? And that's one of the things that I've had to work with. And one of the things that I'm going to overcome is that. Now, what does that end up leading to? I don't know. So
Yeah. Well,
we're
the funny
we're
thing
gonna
about
find
that,
out.
Matt, is that your whatever you believe to be true at the subconscious level, you'll make it true through the stories you tell yourself, right? And so you'll tell yourself this story of like, oh, well, here are all these people who weren't able to achieve what I want because they started too late. Here are all these people who started earlier than me, and that's why they're ahead of me. So create all this story. But once we change the belief, I guarantee you can find a bunch more stories of people who started after 13 years old who are able to achieve everything you want to achieve. So, whatever you believe to be true, you'll find the evidence to make it true. You'll delete, distort, or generalize reality around you, information to make it true for you. Because, you know, the story you tell yourself is just like what information you're pulling upon. And so you're going to pull upon the information that affirms the belief that you hold. So you change the belief, you're going to start telling yourself a different story. And that's what I think a lot of people get wrong in this personal development world. They just tell you, hey, come up with a new story. But it doesn't go in that order. It's change the belief first, then the story changes because it's automatic. Because the belief is a filtration system that creates a new story. It takes the information and then creates a story out of it. So you don't want to just start telling yourself a new story because that's just banging your head against the wall. You want to change the core belief that's underlying this story, and then the story will change.
Well, and as we're talking and moving into the sports world, you've worked with a lot of athletes. You started in the boxing world and you've moved into now, I mean, across the board pretty much. To even recently, you were just telling me that you just started with a professional golfer in addition to that. So I do want to ask, I mean, what are some of the most common mental blocks that you encounter in your coaching with athletes?
Yeah, I would say there's two big ones that keep showing up time and time again. One is this pressure around, like, I believe that if I'm not perfect, then I'm not going to get to the long term big goal that I want.
Mm.
Right. So I've had, I was working with a quarterback from a pretty major D1 football team this past week, and he had a really big game coming up in the weekend. And we uncovered that he believed that if he wasn't perfect, if he fucked up at all, he wouldn't get drafted into the NFL, which is his ultimate goal. So like that pressure just creates constriction and control and just messes your energy up, messes up your focus, and just puts too much pressure on every throw. I've seen it with baseball players as well. Last year, I worked with one of the top baseball pitchers in the SEC, and it was the same thing. It was like, if I'm not perfect, if I throw one bad pitch, I'm not going to get to the MLB. I'm not going to get as much money as I know I should get, and so on and so forth. And so by transmuting these beliefs for these people and making it, hey, even if I mess up, I'm still going to get that contract. It just releases them from those invisible handcuffs that keep them in this place of feeling fear instead of just being in the flow. And I'm sure it's just so relatable to golfers out there. It's like, if you're starting to get to the higher levels of competition, then you probably feel like every shot is make or break. And feeling like every shot is make or break puts you in this state of just fear, of fight or flight, of not being able to just relax into yourself and just play the game that like you really can when you're at your best. So that's a big one, is like everything has to be perfect or I'm going to lose all the good stuff that I want in the future. And so the opposite is that, hey, even if I make a mistake, I'm still going to get to what I want.
I see it happen
And
all the time with
yeah,
amateurs, all the time.
yeah. So that's a huge one. Another one is fear of what other people think of them. That's a really big one I see coming up, especially with professional athletes. I was working with this rookie last year in the NFL, and he just got a $30 million contract, and he was ready to stop playing. He wanted to quit because he was so afraid of like what the coaches and what management and ownership and the fan base were going to think about him if he didn't live up to that $30 million contract. And so he was playing so afraid and scared, and just wasn't enjoying it more than anything. He just wasn't enjoying it. And that's why he didn't want to play anymore, because it felt like he was so constricted. So when we removed that like fear in the form of belief of what other people thought of him, he was free and he started balling out. And now he wants to play in the NFL for, hopefully another decade plus to go, because now he's free. Now he's in flow. Now all that fear has just disappeared because the belief changed.
What are some
So
more?
those two are the big ones.
Nice. What are some more transformational stories of clients that you've worked with that really had significant breakthroughs?
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of people in business over the years. And so since I've already told like 3 or 4 stories about sports, I think it might be interesting to tell one about business. I was working with this CEO of this company, and he had actually just come from another company that he was working on, where he was the COO of this company, and he had to step down because he had some health issues. And so around that time, I started working with him, and the company just like wasn't profitable. His new company he was working at, that he was a CEO at, and it was basically had this story, this belief he told himself that like he had to always be productive and doing, and in this operational state of being, just operations, do, if he was going to be successful. And by operating from that state for what actually did make him successful in the previous company, his body was just in disorder, and he was having health issues. He was not enjoying his work. The company wasn't profitable. And so once we completely freed him of that basically state of obligation and transmuted all those beliefs at the subconscious level that were forcing him to operate out of obligation and fear and just lack of joy and fun. And we were able to transmute that to get him to a place where he was operating and working out of inspiration. It took him down a path of doing a project that was very outside the box for anyone else in his line of business was doing. And by doing so, he was able to generate an extra $8 million of revenue for his company and made them profitable for the first year in 7 years of the company being around. And so I bring up this one because I think a lot of people's programming around like work, right? Work in general is that it has to be like suffering. It has to be like forcing and pushing, and it's more hours. It's more doing stuff that you don't want to do. And he was operating from this frame. And it was so interesting that once we freed him from that through redoing his programming, he was able to operate from this place of just emotional freedom and inspiration. And by doing that, he was working way less. Funny enough, he started golfing way more, which is what he wanted to do. And it led to him making way more money, because as we know, it's not necessarily, this is this, concept of power versus force that we're really tapping into here, is that it's not just doing more work, right? Because there's a lot of people who work really hard, but they're not necessarily seeing the results that other people are. And so what it's really about is tapping into your power. And your power is finding that intersection between, aligning yourself the right way and then doing things that are in alignment with what you enjoy, what you're best at, and what can contribute to something bigger than yourself. And so that's really what we were able to do with him. And I've been able to duplicate that a number of times with different guys who had gotten to a level of success operating from that place of obligation. And once they were able to move into this place of inspiration around their work, they were able to unlock a whole new way of living, working a lot less hours and actually making more money, which they thought was impossible. And, with that comes a lot more golf.
Listen, I can attest because some of the work that we did together, it opened up a few pathways, so to speak, within business and so forth. I mean, to make a change like that and to get a return of $8 million of revenue coming in, that's a pretty big deal. I would definitely call that one a pretty big success. So obviously you're working with high achievers within business across all different types of sports. How do you tailor your coaching and the approach to meet each person's specific needs?
Yeah, the cool thing about what I do is that it really can apply to anything in life. As long as you are ambitious and you have a goal and you want to achieve something, I can help you achieve it because my techniques are working at that core foundational level. I don't need to know how to play your sport or how to run your business to make you more successful, right? Like, I work with a lot of UFC fighters. Like, I'm not going to tell these guys how to throw a better punch or how to grapple better. Like, I don't have any of that information. I don't know how to do that. But what I do know how to do is identify with them what they want. And they can tell me, hey, I want to achieve this. And then I can feel with them into their body to identify what is the resistance is holding you back from doing things necessary to get that. And so the process is the same no matter who the person is. And so I'm actually just a mirror for the person, and I'm guiding them through the process of doing the work on themselves. And so that's why it works for anyone, because everyone knows deep down what needs to shift inside of them. They just need a good coach to reflect that back to them and guide them through the process of making these interchanges.
Love that. Now, let's get specifically into golf and how Program to Fail can help golfers. I've got a few thoughts on this because obviously of working with you one-on-one, having read the book, and one of the big things for me is that I don't think you need to necessarily be a professional golfer in order to benefit from what you coach and teach and so forth, because it will help alleviate a lot. And I talked about it just a few moments ago when I was like, this, I know so many amateurs out there that struggle where that perfection side of it, even though they're like, oh, I'm a terrible golfer or whatever, but they get into this mode to where they hit one bad shot and then they're screwed up for the rest of the round. They're like, oh, I just don't have it today. And it's like, hang on a second, you're not a good golfer. 90% of your shots are not going to be perfect. So why are you expecting all of your shots to be so good throughout the round? Like, that is just a sample size of what you're going to do throughout the rest of the day, as long as you maintain confidence and so forth. So how do you end up, or what would you say with Program to Fail would help these amateurs and individuals, maybe even weekend warriors, help them remove that self-doubt and enter into more of a flow state that you mentioned?
Yeah. What came up for me when you were saying that was a more foundational belief around themselves and achievement in life. And like, I believe if I don't have success, I believe if I don't have success all the time, then I'm a failure, or like there's some deeper programming there, right? And so, as you know, everything I do is personalized. So it'd have to be a real world situation for me to fully go into this. But what comes up for me is like I'm thinking of like this person who just wants to go enjoy themselves. And like you said, they're setting unrealistic expectations. And so they're going out there and they're not hitting the ball well, but it's like, what can they expect? And the reason why they're suffering is because this deeper belief they have around themselves around like, if they're not good or if people see them not perform well, then that says something about who they are as a person, right? At a more foundational level. And so they're creating this deeper suffering that's not necessary because of that program they have. Does that make sense?
It sure does. I mean, 90% of the golf game is mental. You hear pros talk about it all the time, that it's between the ears. Like, once you get a skill set swing wise, or you can have a consistent type of ball flight or shot, then really it becomes 90% mental at that point. And your approach to this, it's funny because I was reading the book and all of a sudden it struck me that this is completely relatable to golf, because we didn't really work a whole lot on golf specific stuff. And I'm like, hang on a second, there's really something here to it. And so I do wonder, now that you've just started working with a professional golfer, not myself, for instance, so I'm not referring to myself here, folks, but you just started working with a professional golfer. Do you see the mental side to golf? And I'm curious to get your first impressions of working with a professional golfer.
Yeah, well, Actually, I haven't had my first session with this guy yet.
Ah,
I work with him in a couple days. Um, but with that being said, it's going to be the same as all the sports I work on. You know, it's going to be the same stuff, guaranteed. This guy in particular, he's from Northern Ireland, and I have a really good friend from Northern Ireland, and I kind of know their culture and like a lot of their core programming of like what people like that are from. They're like, it's very much the energy of like, who do you think you are to try to be so successful? It's like, people are more like townies of like, hey, like we're all just some regular people, and if you
average
try to go
Joes.
do yeah, yeah. If you try to go do something really ambitious, it's like, who do you think you are? So I can already tell with him that's going to be a major part of like the reprogramming we do is like transcending that judgment from, the circles he grew up around and what friends from home are going to think about him and all the programming he just grew up with around like, hey, like shut up, like be humble, not even be humble, but like be less than so other people can feel more comfortable.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and so I can already anticipate that. But I'll definitely follow up with you to let you know how that goes. But you
Folks,
you
I
can
will
feel
definitely
free to share.
follow up on a future
Yeah,
episode and let you know how that goes because, I mean, and you're right in the sense that, working with professional athletes, a lot of it is mental, but it's one of the things that I actually saw at the Ryder Cup this past weekend was around some of the pro golfers. And in the work that I've done with you, I could start to see that there's levels of confidence. And so in some scenarios, their confidence has to be on display. And then when pressure becomes more than what they have even worked through, all of a sudden that confidence is gone. And you see the struggle. We saw multiple times on the 18th hole when matches were coming down to the wire. And, the Ryder Cup has this feel to it, and really the tradition behind it is that it's bigger than yourself. It's for your country, it's for where you're from. There's this sense of just being beyond the individual, and that's where a lot of this additional pressure comes into play. And players talk about it that it is the most pressure you'll ever feel playing the game of golf beyond any of the big golf tournaments or anything like that where you're an individual out there. Like, this is the moment to where you really feel it. And I really felt like I saw those levels of confidence. And you talked about it a little bit in your book when you talked about a famous boxer that you worked with whose dad was a Hall of Famer and he went through some struggles and so forth within his own career. You started working with him and then he ended up being able to overcome those. But when he finally got to a final step, because he was part of a TV show, right? And from there, you couldn't interact with him because they cut off all communication with the outside world to film everything. He gets to the championship fight, and there was still enough doubt that was there in order for him to fail in that moment. And you had to work with him moving beyond that, and he ended up being able to overcome that down the road. But talk to me a little bit about the levels within this as to overcoming those doubts and how they can creep back in depending on the magnitude of the moment and those self-beliefs.
yeah. Well, kind of like what you're talking about, being at that 18th hole, it's like the pressure is starting to mount because now the governor is getting turned on, right? Governor of a car where it's like, okay, you can't go that fast. You can't go that fast. No, slow down. So that inner governor is getting turned on of like, you're programmed to succeed at a certain level. And then what happens is there may be subconscious programming that says that like, hey, you don't deserve to get to that next level. Or maybe there's fears around like, if I do get to this next level, there's going to be bad things that happen. There could be negative consequences here. There could be suffering here. So we have to uncover what's beneath that, beneath the surface, because like you said, whenever you get to these higher pressure situations, you're going to run into new resistance that goes, because the body wants to stay in homeostasis, which is balanced. Hey, I'm safe. So it's really made for survival. It's not made for, hey, let me get to a new level of peak performance and achievement and success. No, the body is going, hey, everything's fine here. Stop it. Stop trying to change. Stop trying to achieve more. Stop trying to do more. And so that programming shows up, and it's kind of like the governor that tries to bring you back down to earth when you're about to break through to that next level. And so that's constantly what you have to be doing as you try to push through to that next level. And I think that's the benefit of having like a mental performance coach to work through this stuff with you, is because as you get to that, like this golf dude I'm about to start working with, he actually isn't a pro yet, but he played Division 1 golf and he's had a lot of success. And so he's going to get his pro card this winter. And so all this stuff is bubbling up around like, oh, okay, well, all those, fears and doubts that want to keep him playing small are starting to come up. And that's why he sought out my support, is because he wants to get to that place where he gets that pro card. But it seems that whenever he starts to compete to get to that level, he keeps running into these invisible mental blocks to where he's performing a lot worse than when he is in these tournaments that don't have so much stakes on the line. And so that's it. You'll notice it whenever you start to feel like different types of negative emotion bubble up in you, overthinking. And that's just like your mind basically bubbling up thoughts to justify why you need to stay where you are. And that overthinking is just the programming creating thoughts in your head that are trying to put the brakes on you from getting to that next level.
I couldn't agree more with everything you just said about these invisible blocks, because I ran into it when I was playing professionally on the mini tours and everything, to where I'm like, I don't belong here. I'm not good enough. Like all these self-doubts started to creep in, and the bigger the events and so forth. And it always kind of came down to, have I done enough work? Do I deserve this? And you talked about it in the book as well, about another Bufo brother of ours, Mike Tyson, and how Mike Tyson got to this incredible level of being a champion, but he wasn't prepared with his programming around being able to handle that and being able to handle the money that came in around it. To him, he was still this broke kid out of Brooklyn or Queens. I forget exactly
Brooklyn,
where
yeah.
he was at.
Brownsville.
At Brownsville. There you go. I figured you might know. But that's something to where I'm like, wow, this all ties in. And you're right. When you get to some of these levels, it's not even necessarily doubt at that point in yourself. It's sometimes the fear of what goes into what's going to happen when I do succeed at this. What's going to happen? Am I ready for this level of success and so forth? And those are thoughts that have gone through my own mind, so I can personally attest to that.
Yeah, definitely, man. I personally had to work through all of that to myself to get to the level that I am now. So many, broken pieces of programming that have tried to prevent me from getting to where I am today, because quite frankly, most people who are able to do what I do have a lot of acronyms next to their name. They have PhDs, they have doctorates, they have masters, they have a lot of these advanced degrees. And so my program used to be like, oh, I don't know if I don't have enough certifications, degrees, and so forth. And I had to work through all of that to be able to just do what I know how to do and do it on the biggest stage at the highest level. And it had nothing to do with how much I knew before. It was just that, there's all these invisible pieces of programming that are holding me back, telling me and then feeding me this story that has nothing to do with reality.
And here you are now, to where you're working with all these professional athletes, all these super high achievers. I mean, I'm not going to go too far because I don't know what I can and cannot talk about in regards to some of these scenarios, but even being at the Jets game and so forth with a lot of high achievers, being in one of the suites and everything back in New York. You were there for the Aaron Rodgers game. So that being said, you have certainly not only made it, but you're making such a difference. And I just want to ask, is there ever a time to where you don't see the work that you do be successful for these individuals that you work with, that are these high achievers, that are these athletes? Like, is there ever a time to where it just doesn't work? Because I know you and I have talked about it. The success level is insane for people that have worked with you and continue to work with you.
Yeah, I would say earlier in my journey, I definitely had a few people that I didn't really get to see them all the way through the transformation I wanted to create for them. And what I've learned is that I'm not for everyone. I think that's something we all have to embrace to some extent, right? Like your podcast isn't for everyone. Not everyone's going
No,
to
it's
listen
not.
to you talk about bufo and golfing. And that's something I had to embrace, was that I am who I am, and unabashedly me. And so when I show up for my clients, I'm going to challenge them in a really powerful way. And some guys don't want that. Some girls don't want that. They don't want someone to shine a light into the darkest corners of their life. And so I think that sometimes I've scared people away in the past
Mm.
because we go so deep and it's scary for people to get to that level of awareness so quickly. And so part of my journey in some cases is learning to slow down a little bit and kind of take them down that path. And because for me, it's like I see what needs to be changed. I'm like, let's go do it right now. And I think as I've gotten more and more experience over the years, I've learned, okay, I see what needs to be changed. And now how am I going to get there with this person so I don't scare them away? Because some people just get scared by their own deficiencies. Like if you take something that's been hidden from them for decades and you just throw it in their face immediately, they might be like, yeah, peace. Like I'm not going there with you. Right. And so that's definitely happened before, where I just have people ghost me because they just don't want to get into what we got into in that session. And then other times I've learned that, like this person just, they don't mesh well with me. Like we don't get along well. And I've had that as well. But I think talk about being in alignment, recently I've only been getting people who really align with me and who I am. And I guess are meeting me in the emotional frequency that I'm living in, because I haven't had that happen for a while. And I think that's just because I'm showing up in my own life in full alignment. So I'm not attracting in people who are misaligned from who I want to be, because I think the people that you meet are always just a reflection of like where you're at emotionally in your own life in many ways. And so I think I've had my own ups and downs, and sometimes someone might get in who really wasn't the type of person that I wanted to work with, and that led to me not lining up fully with them. And so now I think I'm more in alignment with the man I want to be, and that seems to be better, bringing in people who are more in alignment with doing the type of work that I do.
Incredible. I couldn't agree more. I mean, this podcast is certainly, you referenced it, is one of those to where it's not going to be for everybody, and that's okay. So we've got our nice little tribe that we've put together, and it continues to grow, which is nice. And, you never know where it's going to end up going. But what is next on the horizon for you?
Bro, just playing this infinite game of just continuing to coach. I think someone might look at what I do and like, all right, how do we scale this out, productize this? It's like, I just want to keep coaching every day. Just want to keep doing what I'm doing. I found what I love. And so for me, it's just exhilarating to be able to, work with an athlete. And then like Friday, I worked with this college quarterback, and this Saturday I got to sit on my couch and watch him play. Like that's so fun for me.
That's
Just to
pretty
like feel
cool.
like I'm a part of that journey. And so I want to just keep doing that, and then just continue to work with more and more people who are striving for greatness, so I can be a part of that journey and kind of celebrate those wins with those people.
Man, you're making me almost feel like I'm almost to 40 years old. And I'm like, has there ever been somebody that has gone back into golf, never been on the PGA Tour, but gone back and all of a sudden at the age of 40 made it onto the PGA Tour? Gosh, I don't know, Brandon. We might have to start working on some stuff here. You're
Let's
getting me
go.
pumped up. I mean, when I
Let's
was
go,
reading the
Matthew.
book too, you were sharing all these stories, and I'm like, man, I really need to put this towards golf and start working towards some of these things. It would go nicely hand in hand with the show. But how can our listeners find? Well, one, I already mentioned around the book. You can get it right on Amazon. Program to Fail. If you type that in, you're going to see the book on Amazon. But where else can they find you, Brandon? Website, social media handles, in order to learn more about you?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram, Brandon Epstein _. Pretty active on there. Share case studies, share just little tidbits of information that I pick up from working with clients. It's a great place to connect with me. You can email me, Brandon at theowned.industries. The book is a great place to tap in. It really is. It's kind of like the foundation for everything. So it's a quick read. And, my goal behind the book was to make it so good that you didn't want to put it down and you just read all the way through it in one sitting.
That's
And
what
I
I
know, Matt,
did.
you listened to the Audible version and you listened to it all the way through. And so
All
that was
right,
my goal.
confession. All right, confession. I didn't read the book. I listened to the book. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
a listener. I'm a media guy, so I don't read all that often. If people couldn't tell already by some of the stuff I say, but that being said, I did listen to the entire thing in a complete sitting on my drive up to Las Vegas a few weekends ago. Which, I mean, the storytelling and hearing it from your voice, I do have to say, folks, if you like listening to audiobooks, get the audiobook, because listening to you tell those stories are phenomenal. And I'm sure people will get the same thing out of reading the book, but certainly the audiobook was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, bro. It's fun. Yeah, it's the book's gonna be on Audible as well. So listen, read it, whatever you want. But it's quick, it's entertaining. It's a lot of stories. Part one is like the fun part. You get to hear all the stories, and then part two is like if you're inspired by part one, you dig into the playbook and you do the work, and you can make a choice from there if you want to do that.
Do the work. I know I'm going to be continuing to work on all of this, and I'm going to translate it right to the golf game. Might need to have you back on for a part 2 after I put in all of that work. But Brandon, thank you so much, man, for coming on, being the first one on the team series, which, like I mentioned early in this episode, I'm going to be doing a complete team series of the people that I've surrounded myself with in order to strive for greatness and success within this life. And certainly you are a big part of that, Brandon. I'm also going to be having on my golf-specific trainer on, as well as my golf instructor. So we're going to be going into even more as we go along here, but you are part of the crew, my man, and everybody that's listening, make sure to get that book, even if, give it a shot. Give it a shot. If you're even like, I don't really understand all of this, just know that it's going to make you a better golfer. It's going to make you a better business person. It's going to lead to more success. So for the $10 that it is, go ahead and get yourself a copy. And I just want to thank you again, Brandon, for coming on and being a part of this. Hang on for a minute after we sign off. And until next time, everybody, make sure to subscribe, follow, do what you got to do in order to make sure that you keep up with the Pull Hook Golf episodes week in and week out. We bring it to you weekly. So thanks again, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Season 2 of the Pull Hook Golf Podcast. Make sure to hit subscribe and go to www.pullhookgolf.com for more information.